Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to get started. Before we do, I just kind of want to lay the foundation and framework for how these videos are going to go. I think what I'm going to be doing is sharing parts of my story and then kind of pivoting and going down some rabbit trails of different tools and things that I found in those things. So you might hear me say a story and then the next week kind of go off into some tools and resources, and then you might also see me jump around on my story. And what this video today is going to do is kind of lay out that framework and that map of what you can be expecting in the next few weeks. I actually want to rewind. Last week I shared on my what got me to my healing journey, and I kind of want to rewind just a year before 2019 to give you an actual picture of where my mind was and what the heck, like why it took me so long to get here. So in 2018, I would say mid 2018, my husband was really struggling a lot with his mental health and really questioning whether he still wanted to be a pastor or not. And so the church decided to give him a sabbatical. And on that sabbatical, I was really excited to just spend time with my family. We had a 1-year-old and we had a baby that wasn't even a full year old yet. So I was excited to just have a family vacation, do a road trip, and really just get some restoration in our bodies. That word was a word that came to me before we started our sabbatical. It was restoration, and I was so excited about it. I was like, I feel like this is the theme of our rest, of our Sabbath, and I feel like we're going to come back totally renewed and restored and ready for the next chapter God has for us. And what I didn't know is that restoration wasn't something that was going to be a month long initiative. It was going to be years long. And it truly was a word that the Lord put on my heart, because it was something that I was not expecting. I didn't even know. When you restore something, sometimes you have to pull it apart and put it back together. You have to sand it down. You have to, put new paint on it. You have to, sometimes you find rust or mold in things and you have to get rid of it. It could actually be a very tedious and painful process. And that's not something that I thought about when I thought about the word restore. So it definitely led me to my knees. I heard restore, again, I thought it was a 1-month process. And then we got back from our sabbatical and my husband's like, yeah, I think I am going to step down as a lead pastor. And I don't know what that looks like, but they're going to help me figure that out. And I was like, okay, let's do this, along for the ride. About a few months later, that was 2018, like December, and when he came back, it was 2019, January. And then May, Mother's Day, when everything kind of blew up, and I thought, okay, well, this is part of the restoration process. God is revealing all of this junk we have to get rid of, all of the stuff we have to work through. And we have a plan, and we have people in our church to help us. And, that plan was 6 months, 1 to 1 year. And so again, I was like, okay, we're still on the restoration process. It's not all rainbows and butterflies like I thought, but, in a year, everything will be restored and renewed, and we'll be back plugged into the church, and it's all going to be good. And that was not the case. Fast forward to 2025, and I feel like the hardcore restoration process is finally over. There's still a lot of things I am healing in my journey now, which I'll touch on a little bit later, because that's not like the main focus right now. But what is important is what that restoration process showed me. And like I mentioned in my last video, there were multiple parts of myself that I needed to heal. So back to the timeline of what these videos are going to look like. In my journey, I realized that there were main components that I kind of needed to pull out and separate and categorize and then like focus on one thing at a time. Yes, of course, some of that stuff like interlapped because, you know, life is life and we have to deal with things as they come. But for me, what that looked like was myself, my marriage, church, and community and friendship and family. So in these next few videos, I'm gonna, like I said, I'll pop into one of these subjects and kind of share some tools that helped pull these things out and help me understand them, and then kind of jump back into the story timeline again and just gonna get deeper into each of those different times in my life. I do want to touch on a little bit in this video are the two topics that were like probably the hardest for me in my journey, which would be understanding who I was as an individual and who I was and what my family kind of made me, and how to navigate family relationships as an adult with their own kids and their family. Those were things that were really, really hard for me because I had realized that living with my family showed me just how much I put into how my family views me and sees me, and how that affects all the decisions that I make. And so realizing that like that's probably not the healthiest way to live my life is like, you know, something that I had to deal with. And then with self, I had to realize and really take a deep dive look into my heart and realize I was living a life to please others. And so I'm going to go into those stories first on my next video, just because there's so much and I don't want to rush through it. But I'm really excited, and thank you again for joining me. I look forward to chatting with you guys later on. Have a good day. Bye.